VEX Assassin. The city was a cathedral of glass and neon, built on crypto fortunes and blood contracts. Drones screamed overhead like restless angels, scanning for unpaid debts and unlicensed implants. Down below, the streets stank of ozone, cheap synth and desperation. She walked alone, shoulders squared, cloak hanging open just enough to show the flash of a holstered plasma sidearm. A lure, a challenge. Her neural HUD tagged every flicker of movement around her. A dozen young thugs lurking in shadowed alleys, eyeing her like scavengers circling a wounded machine. They made their move, bold and loud, spitting crude insults and promises of what they'd do to her. One grabbed her arm. The second his greasy fingers brushed her jacket, the mask dropped. Her optics shifted to combat red, subvocal commands unlocking every weapon she carried. The alley lit up in staccato bursts of muzzle flash and railgun discharge. Her movements were a blur. Headshot, headshot, pivot, headshot. A dozen kinetic kill marks bloomed in her HUD like digital flowers, every target neutralized in under 4 seconds. The smell of scorched polymer and blood clung to the night air. She crouched among the still warm bodies, pulling her custom extractor tool from her belt. One by one, she yanked teeth, tiny biometric keys tied to bounty ledgers. Each one meant a payout, another chunk of Bitcoin transferred to her wallet. Minutes later, she strolled into a chrome-plated kiosk glowing on the corner, slid the teeth into the intake, and let the machine hum as it validated her kills. A figure flashed on the hollow screen. Her account balance ticked upward. The system chimed. Bounty transaction complete. Welcome back, VEX. The kiosk finished its last transaction. VEX thumbed the side of her neural rig, opening the private transport exchange. With the kind of Bitcoin she had, she didn't book rides, she owned corridors of travel. A sleek autonomous aero cruiser descended minutes later, matte black with gold trim, an emblem of unfiltered wealth. No checkpoints, no security questions. The doors opened to reveal her private suite inside. Polished steel floors, real leather couches, illegal in half the city states, a bar stocked with synth liquors and rare imported scotch, a med station humming quietly to keep her muscles in top shape after the last firefight. For the night, the aerocruiser became her sanctuary. No bounty alerts, no gutter thugs, just quiet skies and encrypted hollow calls with her family. Her husband's face appeared first, soft-eyed, younger than her but steady, wearing that familiar smile. Their son tumbled into view a second later, laughing, holding up a crude drawing of his mom as a steel-armored angel. For a few hours, Vex wasn't a ghost in a city of knives. She was just his mother, just a wife, and for that night, the world couldn't touch them. The cruiser descended into the sprawl of the next city at dawn. From above, it looked like a wound on the earth. Neon lit, lawless, a pit where human desperation and tech excess clashed like rust and fire. Vex suited up, her implants syncing with her armor plates, HUD flickering with fresh local bounties. She stepped off the cruiser into chaos. Sirens screamed somewhere in the distance. Dealers, augmented street predators, black market medics, and wired mercs filled the alleys like a swarm. A city where death was cheap, and she was one of the few who could afford to sell it back at a premium. This wasn't safe. It wasn't meant to be. But for Vex, that meant it was going to be profitable. Night in the new city wasn't dark. It was electric. A smear of neon signs and flickering hollow ads competing with the perpetual glow of drones sweeping above. Vex rolled in under the cover of her armored coat, eyes darting over the bounty boards projected along the strip. Faces spun in 3D, names, crypto values, and the criminal portfolios attached. One in particular pulsed brighter than the rest. Karen Vale. Multiple counts of contract killings, human trafficking, and black market cyberware smuggling. 1 million sats. Verified. The last tag was what made VEX grin. Last seen, the Spire Casino. She slid inside the casino like a shark into bloodied waters. The floor was a sensory overload of clinking chips, synth jazz, and desperate gamblers selling their last brain cells for another chance at the table. Karen sat like a queen of filth at a blackjack table, flanked by half a dozen chrome-plated wannabe toughs, all puffed up implants and zero discipline. Vex bought in, sat opposite her target, and played it calm. The savant brain under her hood wasn't here to gamble, it was here to dominate. Card counting came to her as naturally as pulling a trigger. Within 5 hands, Vex had made sure every chip from Karen's side of the table was now in her own stack. Every loss pushed the wanted woman closer to rage. Every win earned a snarl. When Vex received another perfect 21, Karen slammed her fists on the table. "You glitchy little," she spat, and her simps rose like rabid dogs, pulling crude pistols and knives. Vex was already moving. Her chair tipped back as she drew her twin smart pistols, HUD calculating trajectories before she squeezed the triggers. Shots cracked through the casino's din, precise bursts, limbs first, kneecaps, elbows, tearing cybernetic arms clean off. Gut shots folded them like bad origami. But the headshots, those were art. Clean, fast, final. No wasted ammo, no missed beats. Karen barely had time to reach for her hidden blade before a round found the soft spot under her jaw, her implants sparking out as she collapsed. Silence followed, broken only by the soft whir of Vex's extractor tool. One by one, she plucked teeth, the biometric bounties worth more than any casino pot, and slipped them into her pouch. By the time security drones arrived, the floor was littered with bodies, chips, and smoke trails. Vex holstered her weapons, wiped the blood from her visor, and walked out like nothing had happened. Just another payday. The payday from the casino job was obscene. The kiosk transferred it instantly, numbers climbing in her HUD until she almost laughed. That much Bitcoin could buy a city block in some states, or a few more years of peace for her family. 2 days later, Vex was home. Not a spire of chrome or a city of knives, just a quiet, walled-in neighborhood built on wealth and fortified contracts. Real sunlight, real trees, kids laughing, drones only used for deliveries, not surveillance. Here, she wasn't Vex the executioner. She was Mom. She lounged on the deck by their pool while her son splashed around, sipping real coffee instead of synth stimulant sludge. Her daughter, older now, tinkered with a school project, a miniature solar array drone, brilliant like her father. Her husband, the man she bet her life on, stood in his workshop beyond the glass wall, directing his latest Bitcoin rig, a monster of a machine pulling energy from solar, geothermal, even the house's waste heat. He'd built an empire on his genius, turning raw power into unstoppable wealth. Watching him work still made her heart skip. They'd both been savants in their own ruthless ways, carving their places in a world that devoured most people whole. Evenings were slow, warm, real. She cooked, cleaned, told her kids stories about old war heroes instead of bounty hunters. The nights belonged to her and her husband, quiet moments where they could pretend there wasn't cities full of teeth and blood beyond their borders. A week later, she kissed her family goodbye and boarded a top-tier Aero cruiser again. This time the destination was worse than any other. A sprawling, vile metropolis where the law was an auction and monsters wore human faces. Vex geared up mid-flight, plates clicking into place, neural rigs syncing, HUD feeding her the latest bounty boards updates for this new city. By the time the cruiser touched down, the loving wife and mother had been packed away. and the predator stepped out, ready to turn filth into Bitcoin. The strip's club's neon signage buzzed like a broken insect, painting the street in sickly pink light. The bounty's intel had been right. Jarek Soul, heir to a family fortune built on bloodied corporate takeovers, now playing crime lord with his band of spoiled thugs. Bitcoin bought them everything except class. Tonight, Vex would collect the price on his head. She walked through the door, playing the role, new girl, fresh face, there to audition. The air was thick with cheap smoke and cheaper men. Jarek lounged in a private booth with his entourage laughing too loud, their voices slurred with synth booze. The club's music thumped like a dying heart. Vex stepped up to the table, all fake smiles and practiced shyness, just enough to make them underestimate her. Name? Jarek asked, eyes crawling over her like a scanner searching for flaws. Doesn't matter, she replied, voice soft, baiting him in. He sneered, leaned back, and his boys barked cruel jokes, betting how long she'd last in their little empire. None of them noticed her right hand resting casually on the hem of her jacket, where her pistols waited. One of them said the wrong thing, a threat disguised as a joke. It was all Vex needed. The smile vanished. Her pistols cleared leather before the thug could stand. Bang, bang, bang. 3 rounds, 3 groins, dropping them screaming. Her HUD painted targets red faster than her fingers moved. Limbs shredded, guts opened, muzzle flashes strobing the room like hellfire. Jarek scrambled for a weapon, pleading, bargaining between curses. We can talk, he stammered, blood dripping from his leg where her first shot had shattered bone. Vex didn't slow down. She advanced like a machine, rounds finding skulls one by one, each begging voice cut short by a precise, merciless headshot. In under 15 seconds, every spoiled thug lay dead or dying, the club echoing with silence broken only by the slow drip of blood on the floor. She holstered one pistol, pulled her extractor tool from her belt, and crouched. Tooth by tooth, she collected her pay. Jarek's final breath rattled beside her boots. When the last molar hit her pouch, she stood, flicked blood from her gloves, and walked out into the neon night without a word. Bitcoin would clear in an hour, another city's filth wiped clean, one bounty at a time. The stars above weren't the stars of Earth. Out here, far from the gravity wells of the vile cities, the night stretched forever, an endless glittering ocean. Vex lay back on a sun-warmed lounger on the deck of their private orbital resort, watching her son chase a zero-gravity ball across the recreation dome, while her daughter sketched spaceships in the corner. Her husband floated nearby, laughing, his ever-present datapad showing energy output curves from his mining rigs back home. Even on vacation, the man couldn't stop optimizing, pulling crypto from the vacuum of the universe itself. But he looked happy. They all did. Days here were easy. They swam in orbital pools and transparent walls showing the planets below, ate real food flown in at obscene cost, slept under glass ceilings where the cosmos burned like a living painting. The world outside, the contracts, the blood, the teeth, it felt far away. For once, she wasn't Vex the weapon. She was just a mother, a wife, a woman with a family and more wealth than entire cities would ever see. They spent their last evening dining in the observation ring, the children giddy from sugar treats while Vex leaned against her husband's shoulder, watching a gas giant turn slowly in the black. Her implants were powered down for once. No bounty boards, no tactical overlays, just stars, just peace. The next morning, after tearful hugs and promises to be back soon, Vex boarded her cruiser. As the engines hummed to life and her HUD blinked awake with new targets and fresh intel, she looked back one last time at her family floating in the resort's glow. Then the predator slid back into her skin, and the cruiser burned towards the next vile metropolis. The city greeted her with the hostility before she'd even taken 10 steps from the landing pad. 2 thugs swaggered up, mouths running faster than their brains. hurling insults as if the neon-lit streets belonged to them. Vex didn't slow her stride, didn't even glance up fully. She just drew both her pistols mid-sentence, squeezed off 2 clean rounds, and dropped them where they stood. Headshots, perfect, instant. The city kept moving around her, nobody blinking. This place was too rotten for anyone to care about a pair of wasted punks. She didn't bother extracting teeth. Not worth the ammo she'd spent. The real job was waiting. Bounty this time wasn't some street dog. It was Raffin Levay, a high-stakes scammer who had made millions on fraudulent contracts and deep-fake bank runs, leaving thousands bankrupt. The intel had been clear. Heavy resources, automated defenses, connections in every dark net corner, but also a home, a wife, and 2 young kids. Vex didn't knock down the door, guns blazing. That wasn't the contract. This one required patience, precision, a lesson written in fear. Bright and early, she walked up the front path of Raffin's clean suburban hideout, dressed down in a civilian jacket. The wife opened the door, polite but cautious. Within minutes, Vex had a smile on her face and a soft tone in her voice. She played with the kids in the living room, complimented the house, laughed at their silly games. To anyone watching, she was just a friend stopping by. By the time Raffin came home that evening, the scene was picture perfect. His wife was setting the dinner table. Vex was smiling at the children's pictures they drew for her. Every instinct in him wanted to twitch, to panic, but she met his eyes and smiled like an old ally. He let himself believe it. They had dinner together, talked about nothing of consequence, the kind of small talk that made normal people feel safe, the kind that dulled the edge of fear. Later, Raffin offered to walk her to her transport. The night was quiet, suburban streetlights humming overhead. As soon as they were out of sight of the house, Vex's hand suddenly found her way around his throat, a garrote wire flashing in the dim glow. She locked eyes with him as the steel bit into his neck, her voice calm, almost gentle. "Your last con just cashed out," she whispered, tightening the wire as he gurgled and clawed uselessly at it. She held steady until the fight drained from his body, her gaze never leaving his panicked eyes. When it was done, she eased him to the pavement, silent and neat, as if nothing had happened. From her pouch came the extractor tool, quick, efficient, 2 teeth secured for the bounty claim. She walked to her transport, boots silent on the asphalt, leaving his body cooling under the flickering street lamp. Just another payout inbound. The ocean had always been the last unexplored frontier, but for families like Vex, Bitcoin opened every sealed door. They descended in a private luxury bathysphere, the pressure of miles of water above them held at bay by walls of diamond-reinforced alloy. Outside the panoramic glass, endless blue turned into darkness, lit only by bioluminescent creatures drifting like alien stars. They weren't tourists, they were royalty beneath the waves. Their living quarters were a mobile undersea villa, polished chrome and warm wood accents, real leather furniture, a kitchen stocked with delicacies hauled in from the surface every day. Every room had a wide viewing panel where deep-sea leviathans glided past, silent and ancient. Days were spent exploring. The kids darted around in small personal submersibles like the fish with thrusters, their laughter echoing through comm channels as they chased schools of glowing jellies. Vex swam alongside them in a lightweight pressure suit, her husband narrating over the comms about geothermal vents and forgotten ruins from drowned cities. Even with all the chaos above, this world felt untouched, safe, a pocket of wonder under the crushing weight of the sea. Evenings were pure indulgence, gourmet dinners under shifting blue lights that mimicked shallow waters, soft music floating through the chambers. After the kids slept, Vex and her husband would sink into zero-gravity sleep pod together, listening to the distant, haunting songs of deep creatures through the hull. There was no bounty board here, no weapons, no blood, just family, love, and a rare kind of peace. On the final morning, as the bathysphere ascended towards the sunlight, her implants came back online. Notifications flooded her HUD. New cities, new contracts, new fortunes waiting to be taken at gunpoint. She kissed her children and husband goodbye at the docking station, their faces serene in the morning light of the floating luxury port. By the time she stepped back aboard her high-speed cruiser, Vex had already pulled the Predator back over herself like a second skin. Somewhere out there, another target was waiting, and she had work to do. The city was wrought on fire, towering hollow billboards casting a sick light on cracked streets filled with gangs who thought they owned the night. As Vex stepped off her cruiser, a group of young thugs swaggered up, all ego and implants they hadn't earned. She ignored them, gave one flat warning: walk away. They didn't. The leader smirked, pulled a cheap combat knife, made the mistake of stepping too close. Vex took the blade from his hand before he even realized he'd lost it, and the alley erupted in chaos. She moved like liquid steel, every cut fast, precise, methodical. Tendons severed, weapons stripped, throats opened. One by one they crumpled, begging, pleading, their threats dissolving into terror. She didn't slow down, didn't speak. When the last one fell, she dropped the knife onto the pavement, and the street fell silent. She left the bodies where they lay, not even worth a tooth extraction. The bounty was different. Cal Rin, spoiled son of a corporate titan, spent his days pirating protected data, crashing networks, and leaking digital weapons for fun, all under his mother's shield of impossible wealth and private armies. Killing her was off limits. Killing him would send a message. The fortress had no physical entry points Vex could breach, so she went in through his favorite weakness: loneliness. She built a perfect fake persona, dropped it in on his favorite underground dating app, and let him find her. The messages came fast, clumsy, and eager, and after a few days of carefully crafted exchanges, he begged her to come over while his mother was away. Inside, Cal was excited, friendly, desperate to impress her. He showed off his hacking rigs, laughed nervously, even bragged about his exploits, never suspecting the woman sitting cross-legged on his floor was the most dangerous person he'd ever met. When the confession was enough for her contract, Vex reached into her coat, palming the only weapon that made it past his home scanner: a thin, disposable polymer blade. She waited until he turned to show her another data heist. Then she was behind him, swift and silent. The knife flashed again and again, every thrust deliberate, aimed to end it quickly but absolutely. His cries never reached the room. The computer screen still glowed with proof of his crimes as his body stilled on the carpet. Vex wiped the blade, retrieved the necessary teeth for bounty verification, and walked out the way she came in. By the time his mother's security detail returned home, the contract was already cleared, and Vex was just another ghost slipping into the city's underworld. The park wasn't open to the public, not when you could buy the entire place out for a week. Vex had signed the contract in Bitcoin before they'd even left orbit, and when her family arrived, the gates swung open like a promise. It wasn't a normal amusement park. Every ride, every game, every experience was tuned to them and them alone. Her son's dreams came to life in a zero-gravity coaster that spun through holographic asteroid fields, battling drone pirates for treasure. Her daughter, older and more thoughtful, had her own domain, an AI-powered puzzle world of ancient ruins and hidden codes only she could solve, laughing as doors opened to secret paths built just for her. Her husband, ever the builder, had his own corner of the park, an engineering sandbox where he could construct anything from hover bikes to mini solar arrays, all rendered in real materials and running on limitless energy. He swore it was just for fun, but Vex caught him uploading his prototypes to his personal Bitcoin rigs at night. Even on vacation, he never stopped thinking ahead. For Vex, there were no hunts, no contracts, no guns, just sunshine, real food, and her children's voices carrying over warm air. They rode thrill machines together, shared cotton candy that cost more than most people earned in a week, laughed until their faces hurt. For a brief moment, They weren't a family living under armored walls and encrypted networks. They were just a family. The final evening, they watched a private fireworks display from a glass observation deck. The park lights dimmed to nothing but stars above. Vex held her husband's hand, her kids leaning against her sides, feeling a rare kind of stillness in a life that never gave it to her. But every vacation had its clock. The next morning, a sleek aero cruiser waited at the edge of the park. The kids hugged her tight, her husbands kissed her slow, neither asking how long this job would keep her away. They all knew the life they lived, what it cost to keep this bubble safe. As she boarded the cruiser, her HUD came alive with the new city's coordinates, a fresh target dossier blinking red. She strapped in, the predator sliding back over her like a second skin as the craft burned yet another neon hellscape. The city was a concrete maze choked by haze and neon glare, streets alive with stray dangers. Vex had barely stepped off her transport before the first real threat found her. A feral pack of augmented pit bulls, cybernetically enhanced to run security for the local gangs, but long since gone rogue. Their glowing eyes locked on her, teeth bared, claws scraping sparks off the broken asphalt as they lunged. Vex didn't hesitate. Her pistols cleared leather in a blur, HUD drawing perfect red reticles over every charging target. Bang, 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 bang. Each shot found a skull, every trigger pull a clean end to a tortured animal's chaos. Bodies tumbled mid-run, twitching once before going still. It was merciful, clinical, fast. She holstered her weapons without a glance backwards and melted back into the city's noise. The real job was human, though just as rabid in his own way. Terran Vox, a social media empire built on cruelty. His live streamed pranks had cost people fortunes, limbs, even lives. Cities laughed while victims bled, and now the bounty boards were paying high Bitcoin to silence his show forever. Vex worked the setup flawlessly. A crafted fan persona got her into one of his live events, cheering in the right places, catching his eye. By the end of the night, she'd been ushered past his jittery security and into the after party, a high-rise crash pad reeking of synthetic drugs and cheap euphoria. She'd known they'd frisk her. She planned on it. Every firearm, every blade left behind. But her greatest weapon wasn't metal. It was her. When the drugs fully drowned the room in fog, Taryn's groupies sprawled out on the couches, laughing too loud, too slow to notice the shift in her posture. Vex moved through them like a shadow, every strike calculated. Throats crushed, temples snaps, carotid strikes, each hit ending a life before screams could start. The air filled with the dull sounds of collapsing bodies. Taryn was the last one standing, frozen halfway between panic and disbelief. Vex closed the distance, her hands a blur of brutal precision. Repeated surgical strikes to his throat cut off every sound he tried to make, his eyes wide as realization set in. A final twist of her hands dropped him beside his empire of ruined lives. Silence. Mission done. Vex knelt. A few seconds later, the teeth that proved her kill was torn out of their victim's mouth by hand, ready for Bitcoin verification. She stepped over the bodies, opened the balcony door, and disappeared into the night sky. Just another ghost slipping into the neon underworld. The retreat wasn't on any map. You couldn't buy your way here unless you already lived a life worth killing for. High in the mountains, beyond old-growth forests and roaring rivers, sat the family's summer refuge, a sprawling hand-built lodge surrounded by nothing but sky, stone, and silence. No neon glow, no bounty boards, no drones buzzing overhead, just real air, crisp and cool, scented with pine and wood smoke. Vex woke to the sound of birdsong instead of sirens, her neural implants powered down for weeks at a time. Off-grid, off-network, unreachable. The cabin was a world of its own. Solar panels and micro-hydro steams gave them energy. A greenhouse out back kept their table full of fresh food. The kids learned to fish in wild rivers, raced ATVs along the forest trails, and stayed up late around the fire pit telling ghost stories. Her husband thrived here, tinkering with new Bitcoin rigs that ran on geothermal vents and quiet genius. Vex herself traded weapons for simpler tools, chopping wood, cooking over a real flame, reading old paperback books with torn covers. She laughed more here, muscles loose for once, sleeping deep without the weight of contracts pressing on her spine. But the world didn't let you stay gone forever. The last night of summer, as the sun dipped behind the mountains and painted the sky blood orange, her comm implant blinked alive for the first time in weeks. The alert was simple, silent, and heavy with promise. New contract, high value, extreme risk. Vex closed the comm with a sigh, watching her kids chase fireflies across the meadow. Her husband leaning across the porch rail with a rare look of ease on his face. Tomorrow she'd pack the armor and the guns. Tomorrow she'd step back into the noise and chaos of cities where death was a business. But tonight, in God's country, she was just a wife and a mother, holding on to the peace for one last sunset. The city looked sleek on the surface, a towering skyline of mirrored glass and spotless maglev lines, but underneath it was just another power-drunk haven for the rich and untouchable. Vex had barely cleared the docking platform before the local private authorities swarmed in. A pack of young enforcers, genetically sculpted, perfectly styled, dripping arrogance and wealth. They thought their badges and perfect jawlines made them untouchable. They mocked her, circled her, their voices a mix of challenge and exploitation. One reached for her, another blocked her path. Vex didn't bother speaking. She didn't issue warnings. Her pistols came up like twin flashes of lightning, every shot surgical. One by one, skulls snapped back, perfect headshots dropping them mid-strife. Half of them died running, thinking for one last fleeting moment they had escaped, before Vex's bullets ended them with mechanical precision. Silence claimed the platform, the scent of gunpowder mixing with ozone as she holstered her weapons and walked on, unbothered. The bounty was Aldrin Vey, a crypto magnate who'd orchestrated one of the biggest rug pulls in history, vanishing billions from his token holders while retreating to his armored fortress to live out his days surrounded by indulgence and untouchable wealth. No one could get close to him, no one but Vex. Weeks of preparation went into the con. She built an identity out of thin air, a fellow titan of the crypto world, with ironclad credentials and flawless knowledge of blockchain exploits. She pitched him the next big scam, a rug pull so massive it would echo for decades, and she made him believe. When the invitation finally came, it was gilded and personal. Inside his sprawling estate, Vey oozed charm and arrogance, surrounded by his devoted followers and sycophants of every kind. Deals were made over lavish meals and rare liquors. Plans were laid out on glowing holotables. He believed every word, never suspecting the wolf sharing his champagne. Later that night, he invited her into his decadence, a massive hot tub built like a throne room, steam rising as he lounged with his gathered harem, basking in stolen fortune. Vex excused herself briefly, wandering his estate, gathering scraps from his mining rigs and security circuits. The device she cobbled together hummed softly in her palm, a crude yet perfect executioner. She returned, smiling, and dropped the rig into the water. Electric fury ripped through the pool, turning luxury into a death trap. Screams rose, choked and desperate, bodies thrashing in boiling water as arcs of light danced across the surface. Vey locked eyes with her in his final moments, his mouth trying to form a question that would never leave his lips. When it was over, silence again. Only steam and the stench of ozone remained. Vex stepped out, calm, collected, retrieving the tea she needed before walking out the way she came. Another bounty claimed, another fortune paid. Years hadn't softened Vex, but time had carved a quiet wisdom into her steel-edged life. She no longer hunted bounties. She didn't have to. The cities she'd once painted red were thriving now, built on fear, respect, and the lessons she'd left behind. Bitcoin still flowed into her wallets, Not contracts anymore, but tithes from those whose lives were better off because of the blood she'd spilled. She'd begged them to stop. They never did. So, she gave it back. Every coin that arrived was sent out again, funding safe havens, schools, med bays, clean water towers, and places that once reeked of lawlessness. She traveled from city to city, not as a hunter anymore, but as a strange old legend, dropping wealth into broken places and leaving before anyone could thank her. But the cities hadn't forgotten their nature. Some dark streets never changed. Thugs still swaggered out of alleys, thinking the gray-haired woman in a simple coat would be an easy mark. They never saw the truth until it was too late. One moment they were laughing, moving in to intimidate or rob her. The next, Vex's concealed pistol whispered twice, 3 times. Headshots clean and immediate. Their bodies hit the pavement before the sound of the last shot faded. She didn't break stride as street scavengers emerged from the shadows, picking the corpses clean. The city always fed on itself. Vex moved on, her boots quiet on the cracked sidewalk, her work now paid in kindness instead of blood, but never forgetting where she came from. And her last years were spent in true peace, far from the neon skylines, a sprawling estate in real country air, green fields rolling under an honest sun. The wealth she hadn't given away built a home for generations of her family, a fortress not of guns and fear, but of love and safety. On a warm evening, Vex sat in her rocking chair on the wide porch, her hands old but steady, a cup of tea steaming beside her. Grandchildren's laughter rang across the yard as they chased each other through the grass, their futures bright and unburdened. There were no bounties to collect, no blood to spill, no ghosts to silence, just the sound of a breeze through the trees, the creak of the rocking chair, and the life once forged in chaos, finally at rest. The end.